Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I was thinking about how we open this meeting and do some kind of devotional activity, and then I realized that we're not alone here. It's obvious that God is with us and works through us and among us, but we should also remember that we are not alone as the church in the world. We're part of a much bigger body. And so, as Neve alluded to earlier this morning, she was at a conference in Leamington last weekend. And I thought it might be helpful to start us off with a couple of video clips from that conference. And so we've got a couple of video clips, one of Doug Clausen speaking, and then a video of a song that we can that we can sing along with if we want to. And I forgot to look up the number in your songbooks. In fact, I don't even know if you still have your songbooks, but it is on the video, and it's called There's a Wild Hope in the World. It's I think just a delightful song. I hope that we can learn it and maybe sing it often in our future. So that's how we're going to start. After Doug's sort of brief 3 to 5 minute introduction here, I will make a couple comments and then we'll sing the song along with the video, and then we'll continue with, actually we have a report from the search committee. That will be the first thing on our agenda, and then we'll follow through the agenda as it's printed in your handout. So again, thank you everybody for joining us, and please begin the video of Doug Clausen at our church gathering in Leamington last week.
When I was growing up, but the last time I was in this building, in this room, I slept right over there on the floor by table 6. I was 17 years old, and the Eden Christian College hockey team from Niagara-on-the-Lake traveled here for a hockey tournament. We drove here, the whole team, in a couple of cars and an old Winnebago camper, owned by the parents of a grade 12 student. The student drove. Can you imagine? We couldn't afford hotel rooms, so UMEI opened the gym for us, and we put down sleeping bags on the hard floor and slept fitfully. Little did I know that the next time I would be back here would be for this occasion. And for the next few minutes, let me share with you a testimony of how I have seen God's grace at work in my life through the people and congregations of MCEC. My earliest memories of church are from two distinct traditions. My mother comes from the Amish Mennonite tradition, and I remember sunny, humid Sunday mornings near the shores of Lake Huron, sitting in the Blake Mennonite Church, men on the one side, women on the other with head coverings, and the lay ministers in straight-cut coats, speaking from behind a table, not a pulpit, no piano, no instruments. And I also remember being in the Vineland United Mennonite Church, sitting up near the front on the Oregon side, listening to both German and English readings, sermons, prayers, and choirs in four-part harmony. Most of what I recall, though, were not the details, but the feeling I had. I belonged. In both places. I was too young to know what the issues or the conflicts were. I was too young to understand what the pastors or lay ministers were saying, but I very much had a sense that God was present, that Jesus loved me, and I could trust this group of people like a massive extended family. Through Sunday school and Torchbearers Boys Club, youth groups in both Zurich and Vineland, though I was very shy and would seldom ever take the initiative, I knew that if I showed up, I would be welcome. And so when I was in my grade 12 year, shortly after that epic road trip with the hockey team, I felt called to be baptized, even though some of my closest friends were unsure for themselves. I did not have a dramatic conversion story, as was still expected in some circles. Mine was not like Saul, but like Timothy, through and through. The faith of my grandparents, my parents, the extended community, it lived in me, which was so good because little did I know that a chapel service at school and the conversations that followed it would change the course of my life. The guest speaker for the chapel service was Peter Dick, a former MCC worker who, together with his wife Elfrida, played a key role in helping Mennonites leave post-World War II Germany for South America. Peter was in chapel, and he began his talk by telling us what happened on an occasion when he was telling stories earlier of harrowing escapes. He said on this one occasion when he was presenting, right near the end of his presentation, a man in the audience just stood up. And Peter stopped talking and said, "Sir, do you want to say something?" And the bewildered man blurted out, "I make dog food. I make dog food. I work for Alpo, and I make dog food." And the man just fell back into his chair. The man was so overcome with these stories, he was evaluating his whole life's work, and everyone just sat there in stunned silence watching him process all this. Well, this was 40 years ago, and back in the 1980s when dogs didn't enjoy the social status that many of them do now, making dog food now is kind of a thing, but, and so when Peter told the story of a man blurting out, "I make dog food," I thought, who makes dog food? And I didn't give it a moment of further thought. After I graduated high school, I went to Centralia College of Agricultural Technology just north of here near Exeter in the hopes of buying my own dairy farm. The 20% interest rates of the 1980s, though, prevented me from doing that, so I got a job in the mill room at Vineland Feed and Supplies. And I reasoned if I couldn't make food for my own cows, at least I could make feed for someone else's. And so one evening when all the other guys had already gone home and I was sweeping the mill room floor, one of my bosses came into the back and he was carrying a piece of paper. And he said to me, "Doug, I'm glad I caught you. Would you be able to mix this ration up for me and put it into a bin before you go home? We need to send it off first thing in the morning." Now I knew my bosses were trying to diversify production to appeal to broader markets and stuff, but I didn't pay much attention to that. When he handed me the sheet of paper, though, I looked at it and I was puzzled. I knew all the hog and poultry and dairy rations off by heart. This one was different. And so as he was walking away, I said to him, "Huey, what is it?" And he looked back at me and he said, "It's dog food." I stood there on the mill room floor, frozen. I make dog food. I make dog food. I work at Vineland Feed and Supplies. And I make dog food. Having been in ministry for decades now, I've seen situations like this one. Situations where you become what you once mocked. And I have seen people easily fall into despair, sometimes serious enough that they turn to substances or develop compulsions or even addictions. I didn't fall into despair or any of those other things because I had you, the good people of Mennonite Church, Eastern Canada. Modern-day Thessalonians. Paul arrived in Thessalonica from circumstances far more bewildering than mine. As recorded in Acts 16, Paul and Silas were coming there after preaching in Philippi, where they'd been beaten and thrown into prison before pointing out that they were Roman citizens. Yes, there was an apology, but they hurried them out of town as quick as possible. Still beaten and bruised, they showed up in Thessalonica. When Paul would go to new places, he would first go to the synagogue or place of prayer if they had one. Often there was rejection from his own people, but sometimes there was people open to the message, even with cultural barriers. The same was true with Thessalonica. Some were openly hostile toward him, but not all. There was something about that place. Something happened to some of them when they heard his message. There was an openness that he rarely encountered. And in verse 5 of our text, Paul told them that this was the work of the Holy Spirit. Despite the cultural layers of the message, a Jewish man from Nazareth who was a traveling teacher and healer, but was crucified, died, and was buried, but rose again and is being proclaimed as the Messiah of the world. Despite how bizarre all of that sounded, their hearts were captured. They understood it, and right away their hearts began to be transformed. Paul and his companions didn't stay long there. They eventually moved on to Berea, Athens, and then Corinth. And it is likely when he was in Corinth, a place that proved to be very contentious, that he's remembering the Thessalonians with deep fondness. After the dog food incident, I talked with my parents. I leaned into my community. I made some phone calls. I arranged to go visit the two persons who were my witnesses at baptism. I approached a person in the church foyer who one Sunday had asked me months earlier if I'd ever thought of going back to school, and I asked him that day why he asked me that. I talked with other people who'd gone off to school in North Friesen. And to each person, each of you whom I told that story, all of you said the same thing. Maybe God is up to something. Pray and listen. Weeks later, after worship, I walked past the display shelf that had information from our post-secondary schools. Vineland had a long history then of sending students to Canadian Mennonite Bible College in Winnipeg. So I picked up one of those postcards, wrote my name and address on it, carefully placed a 36-cent stamp on the corner of it, and I mailed it off. It took another year and an encounter with the young woman whom I would later marry to convince me, but the path forward was prepared by you. My community, you did this for me, just as you have done for so many who came before me. To the Thessalonians, Paul writes, you became imitators of us and of the Lord, for you welcomed the message in the midst of suffering with the joy of the Holy Spirit. And so you became a model to all the believers. Your faith in God has become known everywhere. I didn't get to Leamington often when I was growing up.
Things packed into that and into our morning. But I guess all that to say, Doug Clausen is really one of us who was called into leadership in the larger Mennonite church. He talked about the churches that he was involved in, just like this church, a place where you belong. And it's really good to have a place to belong. Sorry, I was not planning to get emotional at a business meeting. But that's really who we are. We give each other a place to belong. So thank you for being here, and thank you for the impact that you make. We are commissioned to carry the gospel forward, and it's not board meetings or business meetings that do that, but it's you living your lives every day. When you go to work, when you go to school, when you care for children or grandchildren, that's where the impact of the gospel is carried forward, I believe. And a place to belong, a place from which we have impact in the world, I think that's who we are. So let's go ahead with the song. And I will get my clicker for the power.
colleague and fellow choir member, Loretta Thorlerson. Laura wrote the song in response to the global protests for climate action in 2014. She has an additional verse. There's a wild hope in the trees that was not included in the hymnal. There's a line, though, that might have just struck you. The future is dim. And we have a tendency to use the expression that the future is bright. And the Voices Together Hymnal Committee suggested to Laura that she change the text of this song from the future is dim to when the future is dim, or if the future is dim. However, Laura said she didn't want to change the text of the song, as there is no place on earth that the future is not dim. You cannot deny it. And so this line remains in juxtaposition to the bold statement that there is wild hope. The song was written before the birth of her child with special needs and before her diagnosis of cancer. And she listened to this song just a few days before she died at the age of 49 in 2020. And her husband, Gerald Falls, and her children are very grateful that her musical contribution of hope is being used as a gift to the church and in the church. She was a grad of AMBS, an overseas volunteer with NCUC, and a grad of the CMU Music Therapy Program. And so we're going to keep singing this song. There's a wild hope in the wind. I invite you to stand up, and we'll gently sing about that wild hope.
Let's join in prayer together. We thank you, Lord Jesus, for calling us to join your disciples, Peter, James, John, and the others, to join your disciples around the world in MC Canada and in Mennonite Church Eastern Canada, and now here at Wellesley, we gather as a group of your followers. Gather us now, enliven the mundane business and motions with your Spirit, and rein in our selfish ambitions that derail your dream of peace on earth. things that get in the way of the Great Commission and the gospel. Awaken wild hope within us, hope of who we are, hope of who we are becoming as your people. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. As we continue, I want to invite Lisa now to give us a report, an update from the search committee, and then we'll proceed with some of the other business in the agenda.
Okay, I don't have things written out scripted, so you'll have to, but that's good because then I can be open to make that comment again about Doug Clausen and Jamie reiterating that we are so blessed to have a place to belong. And so for a while, we haven't had a full-time pastor, but that has not fazed us. We are still together as a group. We enjoy each other. The conversation before and after service is lively. We have lots of great plans for the future. We had worked together as a group on our filling our branches, and we talked about our leaves and our blossoms and our fruits and our seeds, and we worked together through all that, and the list was long of all the things that we are celebrating with ourselves and all that we want to share in our community. And then in a final week, we had done an exercise together, and that's where people had asked if they would be able to find out about the results of that, and we had talked about trying to find a Sunday after church to do that, but things fill up. And so I thought, you know what, this is probably the best space to take that time to share that. So if you recall, it had been put in your mail, or it was out, copies were out in the lobby. We worked together as a group. It was sent online if you weren't available and wanted to fill it out and submit. And so that sheet was this, and it was the 24 pastoral tasks. And I think that also being able to work through all the things that we were celebrating ourselves and our goals, I think helped lead into, okay, well, if we have these goals, what is it that we want out of a pastor? And so that's some boring math, and I'll explain it in a minute, but I do also want to, well, maybe I'll start with that. So basically, we collected up all the surveys that we had, so I do have a little math and data analysis is one of my things that I studied in school, so you got to be up front. So we had 33 completed surveys. One was 60% complete, which we used the 60% of that information, and one was incomplete, so we didn't use it, but it was collected. So 35 people participated in this. I do feel a lot of them were maybe done as couples, so it was kind of more, but that number I don't have. And so I didn't write out all of the tasks, I just numbered them at the side, but we had 1 to 24, and I basically made a spreadsheet and just started tallying what the answers were. So, you know, there was 18 people that rated that the highest type thing. And then from that, I knew what the total was, and then I was explained how to do it. We just basically took the average score, and then from that, I had to flip it around, and so whatever had the highest, we ordered those. So then we came up, and we submitted this to as part of our submission for posting our job. The congregational priority. So I basically took everything that was in here and reordered it so that it came out with the highest to the lowest. And then also from that, we were asked to do a little bit of an interpretation of the results. So the top 4 that I should also say, so when, because I have shared it with a couple people with the board, but when the paperwork came in, a bunch of it was anonymous, which is fine. You didn't have to put your name on it. But I had started building this spreadsheet, so, you know, as I gathered them each night, I'd put a few in or whatever. But then when I knew some of them that were coming in specifically from our search committee and a few others, and they had put their names on, I just want to highlight that it made me feel very confident because ours basically landed in with what was already the anonymous average. So I felt that our committee was a good representation of what the rest of, which you like to feel good about. We tried to pick our committee based on that, but it sort of solidified that I felt like we were reading the group. And so the top four, oh, that I do have that up there. The top four were: the pastor prepares and delivers Bible-based sermons. Pastor visits those in hospitals, emergency situations, and long-term care facilities, informing the congregation of opportunities to provide mutual support and care. Pastor actively participates in planning, designing, and leading worship services. Pastor prioritizes important rituals of commitment, transition, and healing with individuals, family, and congregation: infant dedication, baptism, weddings, funerals, communion, foot washing, etc. And so I will read out those four. So I also want to say, so from this, so the search committee as a group, we didn't go in a linear fashion. We started out and we did have a big form to fill out, and some of it was just basically database. I talked to Susan and gathered some things. I gathered information. We gathered information from committees. There were some things from our previous congregational information form that were the same. But then as we went through, we identified questions that we would really need to see how this played out to finish. So we kind of left that. We went to our job description. We had to meet with the staff relations committee, so we fit that in the middle. And then when this came out, then we finished off our congregational information form. But I will just read out then, so besides laying out the order of the tasks, we submitted this interpretation of results, which a strong majority of those who responded marked preparing and delivering Bible-based sermons as a very high priority, as well as making visits for crisis care and health concerns, actively participating in planning, designing, and leading worship services, as well as prioritizing rituals, had a significantly high score from the responses. The general consensus was that Wellesley Mennonite Church is looking for strong leadership in the weekly worship service and providing spiritual support in times of crisis, as well as significant milestone events, and to involve the congregation in those events. A strong theme emerged for the areas of medium priority for the congregation, where the pastor is expected to support personal growth through scripture and theology and empowering and equipping congregation members for this leadership. Also noted is that while our congregation is very involved in the community and supporting both local and international missions organizations, we do not expect our pastor to focus a considerable amount of time in these areas, but rather support us in our efforts. There was also significant consensus in the lowest priority items, being involved in budgeting, as well as time spent reading contemporary books relating to biblical interpretation. And then we just said those were based off of 35 forums. And so this is a very key piece to posting we post our job description. That can be found online on the MCEC website as of now. As of a week and a half ago, actually. But then this is provided to prospective candidates, and it is the hope that the majority of what we find to be a high priority lines up, and the majority of the things that we have as a low priority lines up. Our rep at MCEC, Al Rempel, had strongly encouraged us to have everything in, when he met with us in February, would we be ready end of April, beginning of May? We said, yes, we could do that. And so we came in about a week ahead. And he said that he recommended posting the job until May 15th. He has some inklings, and so we hope that we'll be able to hear more on that in the next week and a half. And also, we will need to be prepared then if we have someone that the search committee reviews and possibly meets with, that if we were to do a candidating weekend, that we fit that in before summer. So May and June are very busy months, but we hope that we can reach out to people and make some things happen if it becomes important to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions for Lisa? I think, I really appreciate the work that the search committee has done, your leadership in that, Lisa, and I know that the search committee has been extremely busy the last few months, taking a bit of a breather now, hopefully till we get some candidates in, and then the work will pick up again as we start to look at some of those details. Really appreciate that you're ahead of schedule and under budget. That's good news too. No, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and you know what, if questions arise after the fact, if I'm just throwing this all at you now, if something comes up and you have a question about it, feel free to ask myself or any one of the members.
Sure. Sure.
From staff relations, in connection with that, as we anticipate the future, I just want to express our appreciation for the availability of our current pastoral relationships team. Both Claire and Paul have been very available to us and will continue to be. And just to clarify our agreements with them, that with Claire it has been an open-ended agreement all the way along at 0.25% at this point, and his intention is to continue to be with us until the middle of summer and then take a bit of a break, and he's available again come fall if need be in our congregation. That's his availability, and Paul his contract is for a year, also flexible. So depending on what happens with the search committee and so on. So just very, very grateful that we have the two of them meeting our pastoral needs through this time, and very, very grateful for the flexibility as well. Through uncertain times, we just don't know what we need when. I'm very grateful for both of you, and that you are here with us and able to flex with us as we go. Hope that answers any questions that might have been popping into your minds as you listen to all this.
Thank you, Jane, for bringing that update. Yes, and I forgot to get that in my notes here, a bit of an update from SRC. So yes, thank you so much to Claire and Paul. Want to emphasize again, you belong here. So, thank you. All right. If there's no further questions, we'll continue on with our agenda. We want to just review and accept the minutes from our annual budget meeting on January 28th. Is there any questions or discussion on that? It was, I think, a good news meeting. We had some good results from our year end and budget. Mark presented those numbers to us. We approved a budget of just over $200,000, $202,105 is our budget for this year. And as far as I know, we're on track. I don't think we're going to have a particular budget update today, or maybe you're planning on that. I'm not sure. Okay. So anyhow, right now we need a motion to approve the minutes from the budget meeting on January 28th. Would someone make that motion, please? I have a motion from Dave Lichty, seconder to that. Betty Ann Glauser, thank you. Any further discussion before we vote to accept that? All right, all in favor of accepting those minutes, please raise your hand. I think we're good. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the Stewardship and Finance Committee Auditor's Report and accepting auditors for the coming year. And is that going to be Mark? Yes, thank you. And Mark can handle any budget questions that you have lingering as well.
All right. This is the package here that most all organizations that are required have to have done. And there's detail in here which we're not going to go through all, but these are available, Sue, I believe. These would be available for anybody that wants to see them? Absolutely. Yeah. So, but I will go through a summary of what we've got here in your, and it's all here in your package. If you'll turn to page, I guess it's 17, and we'll start there. I just want to take a look at the statement of operations and then explain what the auditor's report is all about. Now, the statement of operations and changes in financial balances here are December 31st, 2023. And we've seen this basically in the January meeting. There are really no differences in the numbers here that we've seen and what are presented here. The only difference to my statements and these statements are the way they dealt with the $10,000 transfer from the bequest fund. I included that in revenues because, well, that would match the expenses we were using it for. However, because it was a special allocation, they decided to put it down, and properly so, they decided to put it down into transfers just below the regular operations. So, and it's note 4 in the bottom there, it's interfund transfers. Okay, so we closed the year off with, in the general operations anyway, the donations of $195,558. Total revenues $212,315. And excuse me. And the expenses are there below. The largest expense, obviously, is the wages and benefits at $149,000, and that was slightly more than the previous year. As well, that's understandable. And we come up with a excess revenues over expenses of $12,538. The second column in there is just the departmental funds. That's the bequest fund, the any other specific funds that we have. The biggest number there is the food cupboard. There's a lot of inflow as far as donations are concerned, and then there's a lot of obviously the outflows too. So those are the two big numbers that you see there. The invested in capital assets, the 4,000, that's just amortization. We amortization our fixed assets at, and it's in around, well, it's 4,000 this year. It'll be slightly below that next year, or at the end of this coming year. And you have a comparison there of previous years. As I say, the numbers here are very, very similar to what we dealt with in the January meeting. But before I go on to the actual literature that they write, is there any questions on the numbers? We can deal with the current situation after this, but anything on this particular paper? Okay. The other thing that we will mention is the auditor's report. They give us a qualified opinion. It's not a clean opinion, but most, I shouldn't say most, all churches that are required to do this, and all organizations that are charitable, they have to give you a qualified opinion because they can't, as they mentioned down the basis for qualified opinion, they can't qualify or quantify the actual donations from individuals coming in. They take a look at our procedures, and they just take a look at the risk assessment. They look at our policies, they look at our procedures, and they assess that those are adequate procedures, that there will be no errors made or omissions type of thing. So, and they're all happy with that. But what they can't quantify, as I mentioned, is every individual that might have given us a donation or an offering. We can't confirm with those individuals that they actually did. I mean, that would be a horrific task to do, and it's just not reasonable to do. So all the opinions are, with regards to our type of an organization, will be a qualified opinion, okay, and qualifies strictly on that one individual issue. There's a lot of reading in there, a few pages of reading, so I'm going to let you read those on your own, and I won't put you to sleep right here like this. So any questions on the actual procedures that they do, or and the opinions they give? Anything at all? Okay, all right. Now, as I understand, this has been already approved in the January meeting, so we don't have to approve it again, but this will then, I guess, just be accepted into the minutes and into our records. Any overall questions with regards to the year that has ended on December 31st, 23? Anything at all? All right. I do have some statements for current issues. I'll take 2 or 3 minutes just in regards to that, and if you have any questions on that, then we'll take them from there. And again, just going to highlight the big items and look at specifics in the way of questions. The offerings, they're almost to the dollar as to what they were last year. We had offerings of $43,494, just to give you an idea, last year, and this year we've got $43,576. So we're right on par with those. Now, when you take a look at the financial statements, the monthly statements, they're the previous year is I've actually got $53,494 in there, but that, once again, that $10,000 was from the bequest fund transfer in there. So we're right on with offerings. And as far as the budget in comparison to actuals, we're very close. Most of these numbers are fairly small numbers in the sense that we're looking at hundreds and maybe a couple of $1,000s in our budget figures. So they're fairly easy to track. The biggest advantage, I shouldn't say advantage, that's a very poor word, but the biggest issue is the wages for this year. That's where we're benefiting in our cash account. For example, the wages up to this point in time, yeah, I'm looking at the right page, $3,400, almost $3,500, where last year it was $23,000. So we've got about a $20,000 cash advantage from that issue. And everything else is on par. The other big item in here, and we've got that in here, is the audit itself. It's a $5,000 bill, and we budgeted for this coming year $5,500. So we're good with that. Questions? I don't know what else to really highlight. Anything at all? Okay, we're basically on budget, and we are at this point in time. I do have a cash advantage, but it's due to the situations that we have here. Anything at all? Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, we do have one more thing to do. That is, we need to make a motion to accept MAC as the auditors for this current year. Getting any?
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mark. We have a motion then to accept MAC, what is it, LLP, Chartered Professional Accountants as our auditors for the coming year. Seconder for that motion, Gerald Yancey. Any further discussion on that? All right, let's vote to accept the auditors, the motion to have the auditors. Yes, thank you. All right, thank you, Mark. I really appreciate your work and your support of the Stewardship and Finance Committee. And just remind me, who else is on the Stewardship and Finance Committee with you?
Gerald, he is here this morning.
Gerald, thank you, Gerald. Neil, thank you, Neil, who's not able to be here, and also Susan. So again, big thanks to Susan, who's our treasurer, who keeps track of the bookwork. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge all of you and thank you. That is a good news report. And I think we have lots to celebrate in that regard. So thank you. We're on to our Personnel Committee. I want to invite Karen forward to present our slate, and a couple of motions there to accept our slate for the coming year, and the Board of Directors as well. So go ahead.
Okay, so your slate is at the end of the booklet there, if you want to just have a look at it. And just as a Personnel Committee, which includes Maureen, Gerber, Larry, and Ross. We have been encouraged by the positive response that we've gotten from people when we've asked them to do things, and that God has provided people to participate in most of the areas that we need people. And we want to thank everybody who has served in the past, who is maybe completing this summer, and thank you to all the people who are planning to serve. So there's one update. We did have a volunteer come forward for the position of trustee, so if you could add in James Neve's name as trustee, and thank you for volunteering for that. We appreciate when anyone volunteers for something, so he's agreed to be trustee. And there are a few that are still open. I'll just start at the bottom. Personnel, but that's the church council looks after getting people on the personnel committee. Christian Ed, adult youth coordinator, junior youth and MYF sponsors, and then elder, which is important for our congregation. But at this point, we have not found anyone who has consented to be elder for next year, for the coming term. And so it is a concern because as of Dan and Donna will be each completing one more year, but then we will not have any elders. So we just ask that you continue to pray for that situation. If someone wants to volunteer, or if you have more suggestions, we have contacted all the people that were nominated by people in the congregation. But if you have other suggestions, you can reach out to one of us. Just keep in mind that the elders do have to be a member of our congregation. They have to have membership. We had a few people suggested who currently are not members, so they were not a possibility. So do I ask for questions at this point before I make a motion? Or to accept the slate?
Any questions for personnel committee? If not, we'll need a motion to accept the slate as presented. Any questions before we proceed? Not seeing any?
So I make a motion to accept the slate, the Leadership Commissions Committee for 2024-2025 as listed in the booklet.
All right, thank you. We have a motion. Can we have a seconder? Sandra, thank you. Any further discussion before we vote to accept the slate? All right, let's show by raised hand if you agree to accept the slate as presented. Thank you.
And then I'd like to make a motion to accept the Board of Directors listed. They are the people listed under Church Council. So the names are the people listed under Church Council. What?
Yeah, it's the Chinese spelling, Schwarzenegger.
I only noticed it now.
I only noticed it now too. That's great. That's great.
There's not enough letters in that.
I know. All right, so Karen's made the motion to elect. In fact, what we do is elect every year the Board of Directors with this motion. So to accept or to elect the Board of Directors as presented in the slate. And I'll talk a little bit more later about our church structure and how our organization is structured. But each of those directors come because of their positions on other committees, basically. So we have a motion. Can we have a seconder? Thank you. Grace. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Grace. I know your name. It just didn't come up fast enough. Yeah, it was here. Okay, any further discussion on that? Questions? If not, let's vote to accept or elect the Board of Directors as presented. Show by raising your hand, please. I guess we should ask if there's anyone opposed. There were enough that if you are opposed, we can have a conversation about it, but that's about as far as it will go. Thanks. No, we are open to diversity of opinions and all of that. So thank you. Thank you. We'll continue on. Oh, yes, sorry. Okay, so this past year, again, the sad event of Ori's passing meant that we replaced Ori on the Board of Directors with Dave Lichty, who has graciously agreed to serve until the end of the term. So we need to have a motion, and maybe I can get the Personnel Committee to make that motion to elect Dave as a replacement for Ori Albright until the end of September.
So I'll make a motion to accept Dave Lichty as finishing up the term of Ori Albrecht as
Thank you.
congregational
Congregational representative.
Yeah, congregational rep.
Thank you. Seconder for that motion, Mary Ann Liebold. And let's vote, all in favor. Very good, that's passed. Thank you. Okay, we have one more motion, and then we're through with the sort of formalities of things. You have in your booklet a whole bunch of reports. And again, as I've suggested earlier, these are really good news reports of the things we have to celebrate together as a congregation. It's things that have been completed by different committees, things that have happened. And so I'm just going to ask if you have things that you've noticed in there that you want to highlight very quickly. I want to highlight the care team, the generosity of the congregation. They were able to donate $3,900 to care fund. The Christmas sharing fund had $3,400, as well as gifts to pastors and staff, to Susan and to the janitorial staff. So thank you to the care team. I think that's good news, and it caught my attention, so I thought I'd highlight it. Anything you'd like to highlight? I noticed in the children's ministry Grand Prix night, walk to Bethlehem, I was able to participate in some of those things. That was those were fun evenings. I know that others of you have helped to volunteer on some of those nights as well. I think Luke and Dolores were part of an evening where their daughter's name. Leah helped. Boy, I'm having trouble with names here this morning. So yeah, thank you all who help, and of course Brian and Donna are a big part of that, but there's others as well. Elders have done some great things. Anything you'd like to highlight, to celebrate? If not, I'm going to call for a motion to accept the reports as presented in our booklet. Can we have a motion, please? Neve, thank you. And a seconder to accept these reports. Dan Gingrich, thank you. Any further discussion? Anything else you want to say about one of the reports? Peek around the... Okay, let's call for a vote to accept the reports as presented. Show by raising your hand, please. Thank you. That is passed. Okay. Can I have the PowerPoint, please? I want to fairly quickly just give us a picture of our organizational structure. And this is really just by way of information to kind of see how we look at things, how we do things. And it was insightful for me to put this on paper because I learned some new things that I didn't know. And, I've been attending here for 10 years and chair of the board for a few years, and I'm still not sure I know exactly how we run things, but I don't need to know because, again, there's something bigger than all of us happening here, right? And that's the work of God's Spirit among us. And I think this is really just presented to ask, how do we need to be structured so that we can bear the fruit that we say we want to bear? So we have a board of directors, and it's made up of a congregational representative, Christian Ed, missions, stewardship, trustees, and worship committee. And then in our bylaws, it says that there's different subgroups who report to those sort of groups there. And the historian and the webmaster don't necessarily report to the congregational rep, but the board is responsible directly to meet with them and ensure that things are going along in a good way. So you can see there that under Christian Ed, I'm having a little trouble reading that at the back, but we have the children's program, the VBS library, mentor program, which we currently don't have, and junior youth. Under missions, and again, this isn't particularly in the bylaws, but they kind of help keep us connected to the food cupboard, and they've taken on now the community barbecue. And then worship committee is responsible to look after ushers, nursery, and sound and AV. So that's I was just kind of interesting for me to picture that. And again, it's a bit like the blind man and the elephant. Like everybody will have a different perspective of this, and so this is my perspective, kind of the angle that I looked at it, from which I looked at it. Then we have pastors and admin assistant, Susan, and treasurer, and they report, or they're part of the board, part of stewardship, but ex officio, meaning they don't vote on decisions that are made at that level. Then we have elders, and the elders are kind of a separate group, but not really. They connect with the pastor, but the elders kind of look after the care team, food committee, small groups, MYF, seniors events, and ladies coffee hour. Then we have a staff relations committee. And the staff relations committee is kind of our personnel department. Personnel look after the, sorry? No. I thought you were prompting me. Okay. Staff relations committee kind of look after the hiring and some of those legal things, job descriptions, terms of employment, that kind of thing, and work with the janitor, again, Susan, admin assistant, and treasurer, and pastor. Oh, sorry, I went too far there. Oh, then we have a leadership team. Every time I want to say, but wait, there's more. Like the people who are selling you stuff on TV late at night. Wait, there's more. Now we have a leadership team as well, who's made up of chair of staff relations committee, chair of elders, and chair of the board. And they're kind of in the middle there. At least that's how I looked at it and saw it. And then we have a personnel committee who report to the board and who search out all of the people for all of those positions. And I looked on our slate, and I think I counted 76 positions on that slate of people. And that included, I think, about 8 ushers maybe. And then it included a number of blank spaces, but not that many blank spaces, which was kind of insightful as well. So, something about this is seemingly working from year to year. We keep on going. So that's kind of a picture of how we're organized as a congregation. And I don't know I guess everybody else knew that. I don't know. I didn't really see it that way until I put it together in a chart form. So now we also have an ad hoc search committee, which reports to the board as well, which is put in place by the board. And then what I discovered, which was, this is really kind of delightful for me, we have a men's breakfast thing happening. And it's not connected anywhere. It just happens. We don't need a committee for it. we don't need, they don't have to report to the board of directors. They just do their thing. I think that's kind of neat as well. So anyhow, I just, again, this is just for your information and see what you think about it. But I know it's getting later than I thought it would this morning. I guess what I really wanted to say is, that structure fits in the middle there between us being rooted and grounded in love and between the fruit we want to see happening. And we talked a lot about being a tree at the beginning of the year and bearing fruit and having flowers. And it's the season of the year where trees are flowering and look beautiful. And it got me thinking about all of this again. And how do we get from one end to the other and back and forth? And so I'm just, again, throwing this out there for your thought, your consideration. And again, I appreciate everybody who's volunteered, who's participated. Personnel committee's done a fantastic job again of finding people to serve in all these positions so that we have a structure that helps us to flower and bear fruit at the end of the day. And I think what I want to be aware of is that we don't spend all our time creating a structure, but we put our energy into bearing fruit. And I think that will always require a balance, and it will always require, checking in to see if we have the right balance. So anyhow, I'm putting that out there. I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions about that at this point. I know it's gotten later than I had hoped it would, but if there's any feedback or observations, I'd be happy to hear it. Yeah, go ahead.
Along with the men's breakfast, I would add another box of Christmas time in Wellesley.
Yes, thank you.
Another box of ABC Festival Fairview.
Thank you. Yeah, see?
And another box of church camping. And I might come up with more if I sit here long enough.
Leave softball.
But the women's softball, I don't think we have a team this year, or three pitch rather.
Okay.
But that's another thing.
They just don't have a line for this.
I got an email asking me to be on a team, so I think there must be.
Donna said that they.
Oh, there must, it's not.
Anyway, whatever, but that's gone for
Thank
many,
you.
many years and may happen again. Yeah.
Thank you, Dolores. I do appreciate that, because again, I obviously don't see everything, and it's really, I just think it's...
Isn't that cool? You don't have to see everything.
Exactly. And I guess what the other story, nobody sees everything, but in spite of that, God is at work, right? Creating a place where we belong, creating a place where fruit is growing and developing, and yeah, we don't get it right all the time. We have lots of things to confess, as we heard about our history this morning, but we keep moving on, and somehow God is working in this and through this. And maybe at some point we'll want to talk about streamlining it or simplifying it so we don't spend too much energy on this, but spend energy on bearing fruit. And but anyhow, I just, again, I thought it would be helpful to see this, and thank you. I will try and add those boxes. Could you email me those boxes so I don't forget them? Thank you. And if anybody else has anything to add, just send it my way and I'll complete the picture. Any other comments this morning? Yes, Grant.
I don't know, maybe it's a little bit the other way, but under congregational rep, that person is also the congregation's voice or evident to the board of directors, isn't it?
Yes, correct.
That's where I want to go, maybe with the concerns, and I wonder if that should be part of the structure.
Now.
And everybody
No, it's David.
No, it's Dave.
Yes.
I'm not sure that's a point for that board, maybe it is, it's kind of it's a duty of the congregational rep, but.
I think that's a good point, Grant. I would hope that everyone on the board, though, is also someone you can go to with a congregational concern. So it doesn't have to be exclusive to that person, but certainly that person, I think, is there as an extra voice of the congregation for sure. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, Grace.
I was just thinking when we're going through all of this, and as a church community, being on care team, I've had the privilege of being able to help disperse some gift cards and things to people in the community. And although they're not part of our church community, when we've done that, they have voiced how much it means to them to be part of this community and how much it's appreciated, whether they have health issues or hospital issues or whatever. I just want you all to know that when we disperse those things, how blessed I feel when we're blessing them, and all of you should feel that same feeling when you're contributing to the funds of the care fund, to that care team disperse.
Thank you, Grace. Yeah, that's a really, I think, an important point. And again, it kind of, to me, it kind of says that we have an impact in this community that we probably don't recognize. I think, we're not a really big church, but I think, to use a sports term, I think we punch above our weight. And I think we do have an impact. And again, I think it's because of what God is up to among us. And we don't control that. We don't see it all, but it's good to get together like this and at least name that things are happening and celebrate. So lots to celebrate among us, and I hope that's a message we can go home with today. Any other comments? Anything else that you wanted to say? You've been sitting on it for a long time and just can't wait to get it out. If not, I think it's a good time to adjourn our meeting. I want to thank everyone for coming. Do you want a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Dave Lichty. Seconder? No seconder. Anybody not in favor? Let's go with God's blessing, go rejoicing, go celebrating the good things that are happening among us. Thank you all for being here.